Okay, so you're started. So, how did it all get started?
Yeah, so pretty wild story, Chief. I was toying with an idea, something about doing something like this. Originally, it was just a podcast, audio podcast, and so on. But I said if I wanted to do a podcast, I was thinking, why not film it too, right? I mean, if we're going to do one thing, we might as well do it all, right?
Yeah.
So I had this idea of this love I have for the fire service. I've been doing this for almost 24 years now as a fireman. I rode up in Poughkeepsie for 5 years when I was at Marist College.
Oh, wow.
I rode at Fairview.
Okay.
And so on. So I became a regular fixture in their firehouse for 5 years up there. I was one of just a few volunteers, and really just had a passion for going out on runs and so on. And the career guys in the firehouse, over a period of time, started treating me like an equal. So it was nice to walk around the firehouse being treated as an equal, not a volunteer versus career or any of that, and so on. So for me, I took great pride in all that. And I have such a passion for the fire service and all the brothers and the characters and the stories. So I was there for 5 years, then moved back home, then ended up going out on my own, and I've been a fireman for now 24 years. Rob got hired at Fairview long after I was gone, so I never even knew Rob. What happened was I've stayed in touch over the years with guys from the firehouse up there. In fact, I was just up there on Sunday for a retirement party for Craig Elderkin, who just retired out of Fairview. And so, it's a funny story. I was there when he got hired. The night he got hired, I was there.
Really?
So,
Holy shit.
Yeah, so pretty funny. So I was coming up with this idea that in 2018 I wanted to do a project that was mine. I worked for a family business, 2 brothers and a father, and I'm second generation. And it's a family business, so you're always doing it for others, not just yourself, and it's not your own endeavor. It's a family business and so on. So there's always this thing gnawing at me that I just want to do something on my own, and love the fire service. Didn't know what I wanted to do, so I said, you know what, I could roll out a podcast. I love to talk. I can talk all night long, and so on. So I said, this would be good, but nobody wants to listen to just me. So I said, I got to find a partner, somebody that would be willing to put up with my shit and so on. So now I only knew Rob.
And he's like, oh, well, this will be a great idea. Let's call Rob.
Yeah. So Rob, I knew, being a career fireman up in New York State, and then he's also a volunteer down in PG County, and then just seeing like his, Facebook posts and things like that. And I've met him a handful of times at mutual parties, and had a couple beers together. But the one thing about Rob and what made me really think of Rob was that I'm a big traditionalist when it comes to the fire service. I think that we need to treat the visitors to the firehouse with respect. I think we need to engage brothers when we see them. We need to welcome them into the firehouse. And you need a cup of coffee. Can I get you anything? Can you do this? Can I do that? That type of thing. And I think a lot of that's getting lost in the fire service. Just the traditions and the camaraderie, if you will. And so every time I would stop up at Fairview, I have clients up in that area for work, so I would stop in the firehouse. I've been gone. I left in 2000. 18 years I've been gone now from that firehouse, but I still stop in probably 3, 4, 5 times a year when I'm up that way. And every time I'd walk in, if Rob was working, he would engage me. And we would end up telling a couple stories, having a couple laughs. He'd always ask if I wanted a cup of coffee. When Rob was working, the pot of coffee was always on. That type of thing. And you don't always get that when you stop in, not just there, but other places as well. You don't really get that camaraderie in some places. Go ahead.
If I want to try to stop and see Terry at work, I'm not allowed because the last time I tried to do it, a fucking train derailed in the middle of the city. I'm like, hey, I'm going to stop
right?
And I'm just coming down.
Right, that's right.
And then,
that was that day.
And then I'm calling him and I'm like, what the hell? He's not answering his phone. It says, whatever. And I look on my Facebook thing, says there's a train derailment in Newburgh. And I'm like, I guess I'm not going to the firehouse.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's funny.
Hey, come back anytime.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
So, so Rob had that about him. And I kind of wanted somebody that I really didn't know. Because I wanted to learn his stories live when
Good
you're
idea.
learning his stories.
Yeah.
And if I already know everything about him, we don't bring that give and take because we already know too much about each other and we can finish each other's stories, and we've all heard those stories before. But Rob, with just the couple stories that he has, I'm learning more and more about him, and I don't know those stories already. And so I reached out to him, Clear Blue, and I hit him up on a message on like Facebook or Instagram or something, right? Because I didn't even have your phone number, right?
Yeah.
And I reached out to him and I said, say, hey brother, I got this idea. Looking to roll out a project, doing a podcast, video podcast type thing, and looking at culture and tradition and X, Y, and Z, and I want to just talk about topics. And so he just texts back. He's like, yeah, I'm in. And so we started from there, and then we got together a couple times. We talked about it, came up with all these ideas. Let's talk about this. Let's do that. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then I'm thinking about, and then as we got going, it's like, okay, but do they really want to just hear the two of us going back and forth about a topic for an hour? So we ended up bringing in some guests and like yourself, and what we've really zoned in on and what I think is hugely important is capturing, like we were talking about off camera before for everybody listening and watching, is we talked about capturing the characters in our business. And I think that has a lot to do with capturing culture and tradition by putting a spotlight on the brothers and sisters that really bring something to the table that highlight our business, and our love for the fire service. And for yourself, you were talking about before, in another podcast we met with the chief before talking about remembering us first, and you brought up the fact that you love hearing from the community how much the community loves the embrace of your firefighters. They give back to the community, and so on. So as a boss, I think that's, it's heartwarming to hear such things.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And so how do we capture that? How do we spread the word that there's still a tremendous amount of good? And I think the fire service is getting caught up in a lot of right and wrongs, black and white, new school versus old school. These new kids don't listen; they're entitled. The old guys being cranky and don't want to do the job anymore. And I think there's so much of that out there, and I think that there is still a huge middle ground. And I think what we're trying to bring forth is saying, listen, there is still a culture, and there still is tradition in this business, and things might change a little bit, but things always change with time.
Mm-hmm.
But there is still that common good. And so what we're trying to bring forth in this platform, and it's not just remembering your first podcast, it's sitting around discussing topics. We're going to be going out into the field, and we're going to be visiting firehouses and discussing culture with different firemen in their firehouses, in their environment, on their kitchen tables, on their front bumpers, and catching the spirit of what we all love about the fire job, about the service. And Rob, I don't know if you want to touch on it, but
I mean, just like even it's like because you got to listen to the Salt Lake tape. I could call it the Salt Lake tapes. Like it's
I like
that's
that.
Like
No,
it's
that's
top-
cool.
top secret.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Well,
like-
it is right now,
But
right?
but like that, like you listen to them talk, and like you could definitely figure out that there was a culture of success in that fire station. And the engineer of the engine, Becky, she was like, she was one part where she was like, yeah, like the guys know that they're gonna get this from me. Like they don't have to tell me to send them water because I know that it takes them X amount of time to get this line stretched, and I can look over and figure out, yeah, they're probably in position, and I'll start sending them the water. So when they say send it, it's there, and like that's what like we wanted to capture. And I think in that particular case, like we went around and we did the first fire stuff, but then like we really got some good meat and potatoes of that fire station and pretty much I think that department. And they caught some hell of first fires. Jesus. The one guy couldn't believe it. I don't want to spoiler alert anybody, but he's like, yeah, like a couple people. I was like, oh,
Yeah, that was.
that's a rough start out of the gate. Right?
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see.